Thomas Fazi is a journalist. He's also a columnist at UnHerd, and he joins us now here at Talk. Very good morning to you, Thomas.
Hi, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I think you and I have completely diametrically opposed views on this particular issue in terms of the airstrikes. I woke up on Sunday morning and went, brilliant, great, the world's a safer place. Thank you, Donald Trump, for taking the action you took. I wish that Britain had been involved, and I wish our Prime Minister and our Foreign Secretary David Lammy were less mealy-mouthed when asked if the US action was right and legal, and saying that, oh, we had nothing to do with it, we weren't involved, is a rather bizarre response to both of those questions. But where do you stand?
Well, first of all, I think that, the attack was clearly illegal, and I would argue it was clearly unprovoked. And this was an attack. I think we're skirting over the fact that this was an attack on civilian nuclear facilities. This used to be a huge taboo in military terms up until yesterday, basically. Now we've legitimized even nuclear facilities as potential targets for attack. And I think that in itself is very worrying. So I think this attack would be, should be considered egregious regardless of the consequences. But I think we know that that the US action will have consequences, and I think we'll have very dire ones at that. I think,
such as.
Okay, so I think the first consequence, in broader terms, is that this attack, I think, really dealt a final, definitive blow to what was left of the post-war international legal and institutional order that was already laid in tatters as a result of the sort of Western-supported Israeli actions in Gaza that I would characterize as a genocide.
Okay. Just making up words, that's fine. Yeah, okay.
What the US and Western countries, I think, more in general showed with yesterday's attack is that they no longer feel bound by any ethical, moral, or legal principle.
And you think the damage for that long term is going to be huge?
Of the foreign policy, yes. I think what they've said, what they're saying is that the only logic that is valid is that of raw, naked, unrestrained violence. Whoever is stronger wins.
Okay. I would say, yeah. that's real life. Can I just clarify? You say the attack by the US on these military sites, clearly military sites, not civilian sites, nuclear sites, which if they weren't nuclear sites, I'm not quite sure why you would be enriching uranium to the extent they enrich uranium, and you'd be doing it 300 meters underground under a mountain in a secret facility if you weren't up to something nefarious and dangerous. But there we are. Silly me, I'm just a little bit trusting of the Iranian regime. You say it was clearly illegal. Why do you think it was clearly illegal?
Well, you don't have to believe, first of all, you don't have to believe the Iranian regime. You might want to believe Tulsi Gabbard, the head of US intelligence.
I'd go with the National Atomic Agency instead.
Just in March, said that Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon. Now she's walked those words, but this was a head of US intelligence.
I think what she said was slightly more nuanced than that. But I would prefer to go with what the International Atomic Energy Association said in terms of what they've got.
It really wasn't. So there's no evidence whatsoever.
There's no, okay, Thomas, you spoke for a long time earlier. I want Thomas.
The Non-Proliferation Treaty. It is subject to international inspections, unlike Israel, who is the only nuclear-powered country in the region and is not subject to the
Thomas,
is not subject to foreign.
Okay, that's because Israel doesn't go around threatening its neighbours and fomenting terror attacks on its neighbours. So we're not so worried.
Israel has bombed basically.
Israel has bombed countries that have bombed them. Yes.
It's currently occupying Syria. It's conducting a genocide in Gaza. It's bombed Lebanon.
Okay.
Honestly,
sorry.
Describe Israel as a non-threatening country.
Sorry, Thomas. If any country bombed us, we would bomb them back. That's how it works. That's quite normal. You talk about saying it's clearly illegal because you're arguing that it's unprovoked. Given that Iran has stated, the regime has stated, pretty much once a week for 20 years, our entire aim in life is destruction of the Jews and destruction of the state of Israel. They have funded Hezbollah in Lebanon and their attacks on Israel. They have funded the Hamas in their attacks from Gaza on Israel. They have funded the Houthi rebels, their attacks not just on Israel, but of course on Middle East shipping and other places. They have been funding terror attacks throughout the Middle East against Israel and against Western nations, including Britain. There's a terror attack alleged plot, funded by Iran, even in going through the courts at this current time. The idea that Iran has just been sitting there going, oh, we haven't done anything. Why would anyone be worried? The fact that they've been developing, enriching uranium to 60% to a point where it is absolutely unnecessary for anything other than for military use. That has been confirmed by the International Atomic Energy Association. Why would you think that that was not all of that together, given that they shout death to Israel every single Friday? Why would you think that was not a provocation?
Well, first of all, let's unpack the two questions. On the legality, I mean, attacking, bombing a sovereign country without UN Security Council authorization.
Oh, Sod UN Security Council authorization.
Well,
you mean if China and Russia say it's okay?
You're the one that raised the legality or not. You're saying who cares if it was legal or not.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say who cares if it's legal. I said, why do you think it is?
And I'm okay with that, but I mean, let's still agree that it was illegal. And then you might say, who cares if it was? But it clearly was illegal by any definition. Now,
by any definition, it was legal because it was a preemptive defensive strike against a country that made it.
Law.
Well, it is. I mean, international law absolutely allows that.
There was absolutely no direct. Definitely no direct nuclear threat to.
No direct. They said
Israel.
The purpose of building the nuclear bomb was to nuke Israel.
The idea that Iran is building a nuclear bomb with the intention of destroying Israel the day it gets the bomb is purely delusional.
What do you think they were using it for then?
So you think they, like all countries, and I think like more and more countries will do after this latest attack. What has this latest attack shown to all the countries in the world? That the only way of avoiding Western aggression, Western bombing, is to have a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
Iran was bombed
like North Korea.
Because it didn't have. Yes. So what do you think is going to happen now?
Well,
if the lesson that all countries are taking away from this is we better get a nuclear bomb as soon as possible.
Isn't the lesson of North Korea
we don't want to be the target of Western aggression?
Thomas, the result
of this is going to be more nuclear proliferation, more countries trying to get the bomb because they've realized that that's the only way to
And Thomas, and isn't that the whole
independence?
Isn't that the whole point?
And if you think
Thomas, please, we've got short time, so please just keep it a bit briefer. Isn't that the lesson from Iran, from North Korea, which is that we can't tackle North Korea because they've got the bomb, and therefore we need, because of Iran and its stance on Israel and indeed on Britain and the US and its threats to fellow Middle Eastern countries and through terror and elsewhere, that actually preventing them getting the bomb is absolutely vital. So therefore it was the right thing to do.
Unlike you, I'm glad we didn't also go to war with North Korea. I would see that as a positive thing. You clearly see that as a bad thing.
I'm confused. Clarify. I didn't understand what you said.
You seem concerned that we weren't able to go to war with North Korea. I would say that's
prevent them from getting a bomb.
The fact that they had nuclear weapons stopped us going to war with North Korea. I would see that as a good thing, and in fact I would argue that
great for the people of North Korea.
On this point I stand with John Mearsheimer, who I'm sure you know, probably the greatest international theory academic out there, who believes profoundly in the power of nuclear deterrence, and he's saying that Iran possessing a nuclear weapon would in fact contribute to peace and deterrence.
I think that's genuinely one of the dumbest. I don't care how intellectual this man is. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Probably the most important international theory academic out there. So maybe you should give a bit more weight to what he's saying. I try to think about what he's saying.
I thought about what he said. I disagree with him because I think the politics and international relations don't work like that.
Have nuclear weapons and they are free to attack anyone they want at will because no one else is allowed to have nuclear weapons. You do realize that's.
Do you see the difference, Thomas? Do you see the difference between a democratic nation having nuclear weapons and a completely lunatic Islamist fundamentalist organisation, a regime running a country who say they are intent on killing one of their neighbours, and indeed America and Britain, the Western civilization? Do you see the difference between, say, Britain or France or America having nuclear weapons and Iran having nuclear weapons? Do you see no moral difference between those two?
Well, first of all, we know that the only country to have ever actually used the nuclear
yeah,
weapon
to end the Second World War.
the US.
Yeah,
The
and
only,
thank God they did. Thank God
the
they
country that
did.
is acting in the most reckless way at the
So
moment
answer the question,
is,
because we're really short on
even
time.
going by your argument, the country that is acting most aggressively and most erratically now in the Middle East is Israel, which as we know, is the only country that
There's
has
nothing
nuclear
erratic
weapons.
about defending your
And then,
people.
I mean, this idea that the Iranian regime, you might not like its ideological and religious, cultural inclinations, but to imply that that's somehow crazy, just like Putin is crazy, just like everyone.
You don't think that Islamist fundamentalism isn't crazy?
I would go by.
You don't?
You're just projecting things onto Iran. I wonder how much you actually know about Iran.
You think women being murdered for not covering their hair properly is sane?
Reading the Pentagon's 2014 report on the military power of Iran, which states that Iran's military doctrine is defensive. It is designed to deter an attack,
God bless you.
survive an initial strike. So now you're laughing at a Pentagon report. You're laughing at.
There are plenty of different reports.
You're laughing at the Pentagon.
I'm going by what Iran says. The Iranian regime have said. Thomas, take a breath. The Iranian regime have said what they want to do. We know they were building a bomb. We know they're a danger to their neighbours and to the Middle East and to the West because they told us that. Why don't you believe what they say?
They look.
Are they lying?
Because countries are not crazy. I know you think that
no, regimes are crazy.
All the 100 million
Islamist fundamentalism is insane and dangerous.
It is simply deranged to think that Iran would launch a nuclear weapon on Israel just because just for the fun of it or just for the.
No, their aim in life is to destroy Israel.
They've
stated that.
Governments operate, even governments that you may not like. Which is why it is just as deranged to think that Putin is going to, is about to roll his tanks out, in Paris and Berlin. This is pure propaganda put out by Western governments to justify their policies.
To justify their actions. We're going to have to leave there. Thomas, I really hope you'll come on again. It'd be really good to have a longer debate with you. I mean, absolutely fascinating. Terrifying also. Thomas Fazi, a journalist and columnist at UnHerd.